day. In the merry, merry month of December. Now, May, when much to my surprise, a pair of bunny eyes. Oh, is this a neat way to travel?
Okay, so they couldn't sing. They were heroes. Hard to believe that was more than 40 years ago. The last man on the moon, just about an hour away from that shot there to dust off his boots, call it a day. And lunar exploration a day. And to hear some tell it, the space exploration, unlike we have ever seen it since, a day. Some say that Apollo 11 and Neil Armstrong's one small step for man was the high water mark. Gene Cernan's Apollo 17 back in December 1972, it's ending punctuation. And now, it's definitive documentary because the last man on the moon is not at all happy how this country's space script has turned out. Take a look.
Great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it.
We had a mission to do, all working towards it.
We were pretty impressed with ourselves. We had big egos.
But we knew going in.
Folks, I'm telling you, I see documentaries all the time. This is the best one I've seen in many, many years. Out of this world. And now, the last human being to travel so far from this world and touch another one. The last man to walk on the surface of the moon, Gene Cernan. Gene, welcome. Good to have you, my friend. This is outstanding and moving and gripping, you know?
Thank you, Neil. Coming from you, that really means a lot. You know, fate played such a big part in my life for those last 80 years. 81 tomorrow, by the way. And nostalgia. When I walked through the cemetery at Arlington, I said, why me? And why not I there and they here?
It was so. I don't want to give it away.
A lot of memories.
I'm sorry, Gene. I don't want to give it away to people, but the cemetery you're referring to is a lot of the astronauts and heroes who died before you. I think you were visiting Chaptie's grave, the Apollo 1 fire victim. That was at a time when most thought the Apollo program was finished. You and your colleagues just kept fighting and fighting and fighting and trying to realize JFK's ridiculous dream of landing a man on the moon before the decade was out. But every time I looked at it, Gene, and all that you went through and your buddies went through, I'm thinking, you know, especially that part where you're visiting the Saturn V launch site where we had so many of these spectacular launches, and it's in mothballs now. It's like a relic. It's like a rusted museum piece.
Neil, that's the only place in the entire world that human beings, Americans, have left this planet and called another world, if you allow me to call the moon another world, and indeed it was for most of us, a home. It's just incredible to see it the way it is.
I love how you in this. I don't want to give it away, but how you you kept saying I kind of lucked into things, but you were a damn good fighter pilot, and
I did.
Even though your buddy said you weren't great at dropping bombs, but I let that go with the kidding that went on. But how dangerous that was, and how you were part of an elite group that was very competitive with each other, but loved each other, and you must look at what's going on in space today and saying we got to get that back.
American exceptionalism, Neil, it's out there in the hearts and minds of our young kids and grandkids. I can promise you, if we give them the opportunity, you know, if I can go to the moon before their moms and dads were born, what can't they do? And that's the real, that's what the movie's all about. American exceptionalism, where we can do it, we've done it, we can do it again, and we need to do it in this country.
Where did they get all this footage? I know you as a young man and all that. I mean, but even in your Gemini flight, when you were spinning on that, dangling on a 25-foot rope, for lack of a better word, but where did they get all that stuff and the stuff from Apollo 10 and There was even stuff I'd never seen before from Apollo 17. Was this just hiding in a vault somewhere?
I guess it was hidden somewhere. That's why I say it's nostalgia. Brought back a lot of memories to me. And let me just say this. I think you know me well enough. I've always felt, with everything that happened, and probably one of the greatest things that's happened in modern times, those of us who went to the moon were the tip of the arrow. And you know this as well as I do. The strength behind that bow are the aunts and the uncles and the parents and the grandparents out there who put the bolts in the heat shield and wired up everything that needed to be done. Everyone, and they're all out there, a lot of them. That was their spacecraft. They took ownership. Their screw was not going to come undone. It was not going to break. They were with us on every step of those journeys I took. And yeah, we ran into problems and we had our ticker tape parades. But we did pay the price in the lives of some of our colleagues, and the home life, unfortunately, paid a big price as well, because a number of us, I guess Mrs. Astronaut got tired of being Mrs. Astronaut.
Yeah.
And so a lot of us went our separate ways, and that's just...
Well, you were very frank about that, and people got to see that, Gene. Warts and all. You refer in the movie, I cheated my family and friends out of a big chunk of my life, particularly my daughter, when she was growing up. Like a lot of my colleagues, I was focused on the challenge that was placed in front of me. I think this is the same daughter, I think, whose initials you wrote in the dust on the moon before you left, right?
That's her, and she's here in Austin with her daughters, and
wow,
that means a great deal to me.
Wow, that's beautiful. Another thing I thought of, do you ever feel that God was guiding you? I don't want to get too deep, but I think of how you were part of the backup crew to that Gemini mission. I think the two originally died in a plane crash. And then we had the Apollo 1 fire that could have jostled completely the Apollo program. But it was almost as if a greater force was guiding you, was guiding all the others who would later go on follow-up missions and ultimately reach that goal.
As I said a minute ago, fate, F-A-T-E, played a major role for just the reasons you're talking about. But having been to the moon twice, the first time I came back, and I came back with the quote, "It's just too beautiful to have happened by accident." Went back to the moon on Apollo 17, and I challenged my thoughts. And I wanted to bring something home to show you and all your listeners, everybody on the streets here today. I wanted to bring that home of ours, stick it in here and say, here's what it feels like. Obviously, I couldn't. I knew we were an extension of technology. I wanted to stop time and think about the moment I made that last step. I knew I wasn't coming back this way, but somebody would. Somebody else would and will. And I came home, whoever your God may be, I had an opportunity, and I just wish every one of you could have been there with me, to sit on God's front porch and look at the beauty of a small part of his creation. Yes, I think God, my God, played a great deal in the opportunities that I had.
Well, I tell you, I mean, every time any American would feel down about where we're going, guys like you are in our DNA. But it is a spectacular, my gosh, I knew this was coming down the pike, but it's spectacular. The last man on the moon, he's the star, even though he doesn't say he is. But I'm telling you, folks, I watch a lot of documentaries. If you have dry eyes after seeing that one, you're not a human being. We'll have more after this.
You're too much, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you.